Who are you texting?
My therapist.
You text with your therapist?
Text, video chat, call. Yep.
That sounds too easy. How did you find her?
I just went to betterhelp.com/save. She's a licensed therapist and it's all online. I connect when it's convenient for me and don't waste time driving anywhere. Plus, it's affordable.
I wonder if I should try it.
It's great to talk to someone in confidence. She's helped me sort out quite a few things. And right now you save 10% off the first month when you go through betterhelp.com/save.
BetterHelp.com/save. Got it.
The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Good day, one and all. It is Fantasy NBA Today. It's Thursday, December the 10th. We are 12... It's unbelievable, actually. 12 days away from the start of the NBA season. Countdown mode is actually way in the past. We're so far past countdown mode. This is, we're almost in Fingers land. We're at the tail end of Fingers and Toesville right now. Good. Anyway, hello to everyone. It's mind-blowing how close we are to the NBA season, and it just doesn't feel like it's that close, which I guess is part of the weirdness of this year. But I always watch. This has nothing to do with anything. I don't even know why. Whatever. We'll pull back the curtain every once in a while on this stuff. I always watch the way that podcast listenership tracks. I find it to be in sort of incredibly illuminating in kind of understanding how people are consuming their basketball. And just comparing this run-up to the season to every other one that I've seen while doing a fantasy NBA podcast, it's so different. We can go to as recently as a month ago, early November. Almost nobody was paying attention to the NBA, even though it was starting in 6 weeks at that point. It was right around the corner. Compare that to a normal early September, and just think about what you were doing last September. Because there is that long offseason built in to a normal NBA season turnaround. The finals end in June. You have the draft immediately thereafter. You have free agency about 2 weeks after that, and then there's sort of nothing. Like, you have free agency in early July, and then there's really nothing. You have Summer League, I guess, that pops up, towards the end of that month, and that's your taster for a couple of weeks, and then goes back to being quiet for a month, and then in September, you start to hear all of the getting into the season stuff. Normally, in the beginning of a September is, right around when things begin to pick up, and this year, things didn't pick up until, 2 weeks ago, within basically 3 to 4 weeks of the start of the season. So instead of 6 to 7 weeks in front, it was 3. And even then, you feel like people are dabbling a little bit. You're just going, oh, is it time to get into NBA now? And a lot of times people are like, no, not really. It's real, guys. It's really starting in 12 days. That's so crazy. That is so absolutely positively insane. I wonder when it's all going to truly catch on. I don't know. Anyway, hello. 3 minutes on I can't believe the NBA is coming is a pretty stupid way to start a podcast. But here we are. Again, Fantasy NBA Today. I am Dan Besbris, at Dan Besbris on Twitter. Please do throw me a follow. It is DANBESBRIS, or just Google search Dan from Hoopball. It's so much easier that way. Google search Dan from Hoopball and hit me up. We got a couple things, as usual, that you can bug me about. It's not bugging. I actually like it. If you want to get in a Hoopball league, we are on the wait list right now. But for the second time this week, the wait list got full to a full 12 teams for a particular format, and so we opened one. So, I said maybe you're out of time, and maybe you're not. So that's the beauty of it. If you still want to get in a Hoopball league, hit me up immediately. This is really last chance kind of thing. And in the worst case, we put you on a wait list. If a league doesn't open up this year, you'll get an email next season when they open if you're on the wait list. So you'll get that first email saying, hey, leagues are open now. Jump in now before we start closing them off. So that's a great reason to do it. Again, at Dan Vespers on Twitter, or you can email Team Hoopball at hoop-ball.com. If you don't have social media, Team Hoopball at hoop-ball.com is the email address. If you didn't hear back from me and you did send something, send it again or check to make sure you got the email address right. Because I think that I've replied to every single one of you at this point. I try to do it as quick as I can to make sure that folks that ask can get on the wait list as soon as possible. Also, thank you to those of you that reached out yesterday about our open DFS slot. There are a handful of you now that are kind of in the pipeline. It's not closed. Nothing is done. So if you want to be part of our DFS team, this is the time to do it. There are many of you that I spoke to a few of you guys on Twitter to kind of clear things up. If you are good at DFS on any sport, not just NBA, this is a year-round thing, hit me up. You just never know. We got podcast spots on the DFS side, article spots on the DFS side, and Discord chats with folks. So like we need good folks that can work under Mike Apotria and Santino Cacone. It's a great spot. Again, at Dan Vespers or email teamhoopball at hoop-ball.com. Right as we started recording the podcast, Paul George has signed a max extension with the Clippers that'll guarantee him as much as $226 million over the next 5 years. So says his agent, Aaron Mintz, who, I mean, you had to know he was never going to the Lakers. Mintz and the Lakers loathe one another at this point. Woj tweeting that out 19 seconds ago. That's how quickly we got that info to you. So Paul George, max extension to stay in L.A. That is, presumably a good sign for the Clippers retaining Kawhi Leonard, because both of those guys were set to be free agents at the end of this year. They both had kind of the 2-year trial period, but PG said, I'm good, man. And so he's setting down his roots with the Clip Show. So that happened. And, not that I got to break it very quickly here because you won't listen to the podcast for at least another hour. But regardless, I said it really fast after the news broke, and I'll always know it. Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk to one of our own here at Hoopball, the great Adam King. And I saved that one for today. I have all these incredible hits with fantasy basketball luminaries right now. And I've pre-recorded, you've heard, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. You've already heard 3. I have another 4 that are already recorded at the time of this, and I'm recording 2 more this afternoon. So I'm actually stockpiling hits with luminaries, and then it comes down to me figuring out what order that I want to present them to you in. Well, I wanted to get you Adam King's notes today because I think we get into some stuff that's relevant to the COVID season, which is what's coming up here. It's also one of our longer hits, which I thought was cool because from a basketball news standpoint, there really wasn't a whole lot that happened yesterday. Fantasy-wise, we already talked about some of the shifting ADPs on Yahoo. I have some things I want to go over on Friday's show that'll sort of peel us around the turn into next week. And then next week, it's going to be a lot of mock draft stuff. That's where normally we start that like a month ago, but this is the condensed off season. So that's the plan here coming up. I have 2 hoopball related things, but we'll save those for after the hit with Adam. So let's just dive right into that. We'll talk to Adam King here coming up right now. Greetings, fellow Hoober. That's how I want to start. I got to say hi to all hoopball guys like that. What's up, Adam?
Not much, Dan. Just good to be here. As we said, it's early in the morning here, so I'm just having my coffee and got the kids off to school, and getting ready for holidays over here, which is nice. So looking forward to almost a 2-month break from my day job. So that's exciting. You
are now, because we fell back in daylight saving in Pacific time, and you guys. Did you guys jump forward an hour also recently? You did, yeah. So, I mean, that makes sense from a hemisphere standpoint. So we are now, I think we're 19 hours apart. Am I getting that right? We'll pull back the curtain here. It's about a little after 2 in the afternoon where I'm at. Is it 9 in the morning for you now?
It is, yes.
Wow, that's crazy. You're almost an entire day ahead of me. What a world.
Almost. Yeah. So I've lined up my leave with the start of NBA, and so my days will just be filled with basically getting up and having breakfast, and then the basketball will start and run through to the end of the day.
Geographically, this seems insane to me, but I think it's because I've looked at, like, I know how they warp maps to make things look more land heavy over the years. But it seems insane to me that there's technically now only a 5-hour difference between us. Hawaii is actually, I think Hawaii is only 2 right now because of daylight saving, but like 5 hours the other way is Brazil. Are you really just that far west? I know you're quite a bit south of me on the globe, but
Yeah.
I feel like we're closer in time than we are in real physical distance. I'm getting a little deep on today's podcast.
We are, yeah. It does feel like that sometimes, but maybe it's a flat Earth, so who knows?
Well, you didn't draft Kyrie in this mock, so I don't know where we're going to go on from a transition on that one. That was Jonas. So maybe I just segue over and do the Jonas segment. He is the great Adam King, by the way. I just said hello to you by first name. Adam, you are you're a assistant grand poobah of all things writing over at Hoopla. I think that's the official title now, right?
Yeah, that'll do.
Okay, there you go. Yep. Adam, of course, is with us at Hoopball. We are very, very lucky to have him. He's at AdamKing91 in the Twitter world. You should follow him there. And sometimes I get a little too friendly. But the whole point of this, as has been for all of our little guest segments over the last however many days at this point, is to go over the mock results from the industry mock, the video that we put together on December the 1st. And so I guess we can just dive right in if you're ready to go, shall we?
Let's go. Why not?
Pick number 3. Adam King had pick number 3. He began with Anthony Davis. What question do I really ask there? You know what? Because Anthony Davis is such an easy one, I'll play devil's advocate, as I did in talking to Alex Ricklean with James Harden. You know, what are the downsides to AD this year? What would make someone reticent about him? I have to assume number 1 is rest. Is there anything else that gives you pause, or is just you kind of you grit your teeth and you just hope that only a handful of trips to the locker room and then you get your normal AD the rest of the time?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really just the rest, and it's already been announced that he's got his load management has been mentioned for the first preseason game. So I'm hoping that's not a trend. But yeah, look, I mean, I'm pretty happy to get him at number 3, and my only concern is some games rested. But I mean, you look at a few players through the first round, through the draft entirely, actually, and rest and COVID. There's all sorts of factors that could come into play this season. So, I'm more than happy to get him there, and it's a good start to a roto draft, I think, getting him at 3.
Yeah, I got no real what am I going to do? Pretend like I have issue with Anthony Davis in the first round? That'd be just disingenuous. So let's save most of our analysis time for the rest of your guys. Jimmy Butler towards the end of the second round. This would be pick number 22, which honestly it makes sense. Like I have issues with Butler this year, kind of the same ones I have with AD. Although one of the differences there is that Butler played, I think, like 48 minutes a game during the playoffs, and was already resting games. And of course, you have a little bit of an easier path to just get into the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. But again, we're talking end of the second round now. So I'll kind of pose this question the same way as the AD question, which is, at what point when is it too early for Butler? How many games do you see him playing out of 72? And, what are the sort of floors and upsides for a guy like Jimmy, where, again, the year is sort of dependent on how many games he plays?
Yeah, it is. I think Miami are they're a very well-run organization. So I think that they're going to manage their players. They're going to be smart about it. And they're, as we saw last year, they're not necessarily going to be pushing for that 1 or 2 seed. They're more than happy to head into the playoffs, sitting in the middle of the East there somewhere. So I think, In terms of games played, I mean, barring any injuries, I could see him sort of, I don't know, anywhere from sort of low 60s to mid 60s. And look, to be honest, I think if you run through, as I said with AD, you run through any number of players there, and I think that's the ballpark you're looking at for games played this season. I think there's going to be a number of players that just sit out the odd game. There's going to be more back-to-backs, that sort of thing. So I would sort of have him sort of middle of the second round, back end of the second round. So I was happy to get him there. He wasn't the first player on my list. I think there was I was looking at Paul George. I was hoping he would fall to me, but Josh took him a couple of picks ahead. So no, look, I'm happy with Jimmy Butler there, and he was a first round guy last year. So per game he'll be fine. It'll just be hoping that he plays a decent chunk of games, and maybe they look at limiting his minutes a little bit rather than games. That's what I can sort of hope for.
So Butler last year, 34 minutes a game, 20 points, 6.6 rebounds, and 6 assists, 1.7 steals, a lot of really good-looking stuff. Kind of amazing when you think that, and obviously 9 free throws sort of artificially deflates 13.5 field goal attempts per game, but he actually didn't take that many shots for the Heat, who didn't really... I mean, they said they were going to run it back, and they really did. There's almost no changes in Miami, so at least from a handicapping standpoint, it's pretty easy to get an idea of what you expect from him on a game-to-game level, right?
Yeah, I think so. The only thing I would sort of that would be nice would be for him to score a bit more, but as you said, he doesn't take a lot of shots, and he doesn't need to, and he never has really. I mean, he's never been a high volume scorer like the top of the first round guys like Lillard and Harden and those guys. So you draft him expecting him to be scoring sort of high teens in points, but he, as you said, he offsets that with good free throw percentage, and he gets to the line. I mean, he'd have to be. Sort of scanning through the numbers, he'd have to be sort of a top 10 guy in terms of frequency at the free throw line. So, no, look, more than happy to get him there, and his floor is decently high. So it's really just games played.
As one little note on Butler, because I think maybe I've been a little bit too hard on him on this podcast, largely because of the fear of rest days. Last year is actually a really interesting comparison for Jimmy because he played in only 54 of their 65 pre-bubble regular season games, which is about an 83% clip. If he replicated that this year, 83% of 72 is 60. So basically, if he hits 60 games this year, this is a dozen. I mean, that's a relatively large number of games to miss. So it's not I don't know if we think he's going to miss more or less than that, but let's say it's close to that. All he had to do is duplicate this most recent season. Like you said, he was a first rounder. He was basically right on the turn in per game value. And by totals, even though he missed 17% of his team's games, he was still number 17 during pre-bubble action. So it's that weird phenomenon where guys that put up really big per game stats can actually afford to miss a handful of games and still be near the top of the board. And so again, I turn back to the draft we're talking about here. You got him at 22. He actually has room to miss more than a dozen games and still beat the spot you got him at. So I think maybe I've been too hard on Jimmy. If he really is falling to the end of the second round, he's kind of a no-brainer. But let's move on to the third round guy. I think I like Jimmy Butler more than people expected me to say I did. Freddie VanVleet is your third round pick. I've seen him falling a little bit. Did you take him earlier than you've seen him go in your other drafts, or is this about where he's been going for most of your stuff?
No, that's probably a bit higher than I've seen him go. I know I did a draft on the weekend, I think, and I got him possibly even in the fourth round in that draft. So, yeah, look, it's possibly a fraction high, but I needed some assists there and some steals to sort of pair up with Jimmy Butler and lock those in early. And I mean, I have a feeling I had him in quite a few leagues last year, and I think he was a second round player. So, and I mean, Toronto haven't made any major changes like Miami. They're basically running it back. A few changes in the middle, but in the centre position. But again, it will come down a little bit to how many games he plays. He had a few injuries last year, so hopefully he can avoid the injury bug this year and play. Again, mid-60s would be great if he could reach that mark.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the places he's going in drafts astound me. I know his Yahoo projection is kind of mid to late 30s. His ADP is actually later than that, which I don't know. I find it fascinating. I think his ADP is, let me see if I can pull this up on the fly, 42, which, I get it. He missed a bunch of games last year. He played 48 of their pre-bubble games, which made it hard for him to sort of stay afloat on the total side. But he was number 28 on a per-game basis with kind of, like you said, running it back. There really isn't anybody coming for his touches. Do we think his steals come back at all? I don't know. I mean, I've seen metrics that show that he's basically been one of the best steals guys throughout his entire basketball career, outside of like 1 year where everybody kind of shaped their opinion on him. He's a guy that seems like, and you got him probably closer to where he should be going, but it seems like he's generally going too late.
Yeah, look, I think he still even though he had such a good year last year, I think he's still overlooked a little bit as an elite point guard, and in terms of the steals especially. I mean, I think he had 1.9 last year, which would have to have had him right near the top. There would only be someone like Ben Simmons probably ahead of him. So yeah, look, I mean, you sort of think of him as a player that you would be drafting for some threes and assists, a good free throw shooter, but it's really the steals that bump his value up there. And so that's one of the reasons I was sort of happy to reach for him a little bit, is just to get those steals. And again, I mean, drafting him following Butler does hurt my points production a little bit. Neither of them are huge volume scorers. And I think when we sort of work through, I think I had to chase points a little bit towards the end in my draft, with my last pick anyway. So, no, look, I'm happy to get him there. I think, as I said, I had him last year, and when he's on the court, he's pretty reliable, and he's again, his floor is quite high. And look, Lowry's not getting any younger, so maybe this is the year that Lowry sort of takes a bit of a hit, and Van Fleet is able to pick up some more of those stats.
Towards the end of the fourth round, you got yourself a Gordon Hayward flavor sensation. Why are people down on Hayward this year? This doesn't really have anything to do with your pick. I just really more of a question around him as a basketball. Is it fear of injury? Because his stuff all seems relatively fluky. I know he missed a bunch of games last year, but he seems to be going to a place where his usage should be on the rise in Charlotte. Why is his ADP like 10, 12 slots below his per-game numbers from last year? Explain to me why you think Gordon Hayward is trending this direction.
Look, it's hard to know, because I've been more than happy to take him at this spot in a lot of drafts. And look, I mean, maybe it's just that injury concern. But as you said, I mean, he had the bad leg injury, which was a freak thing. And then last season he was relatively healthy. He had a sort of a fairly severe ankle sprain at the back end of the season there. But other than that, he wasn't particularly unhealthy. And I think he's one of those players who's not overly flashy or overly attractive when it comes to fantasy. He just chips away, and he does what he does. And going to Charlotte, he's going to have to be at least option 2, but probably option 1. And he was a top 50 player last year in Boston with all that talent around him. So I don't see. I think I got him at, what pick was it? 46.
Yep, that's
back
right.
End of the fourth. Yep, 46. So right on where he finished last year. And I don't really see how, at least on a per game, from a per game perspective, I don't see how he could regress at all going to a team that's got far less talent on the floor with him. So, look, I'm happy to grab him there, and I have seen him go higher in some drafts where I'm perhaps drafting with, again, more educated or people that are more invested in fantasy, because those that are new to fantasy, I guess, might not see him as I said, one of those attractive targets. But those that have done fantasy before would be aware of what he did in Utah, and the team that he's with now is less talented than both Boston and Utah, the teams he was on. So, yeah, look, more than happy to get him there. And I think Alex said, I listened to that podcast this morning, and he said he was probably going to take Hayward there as well, as I'm sure a few guys might have.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that because, again, this isn't a guy that's generally going in the 40s. And so, in talking to Alex, he was like, I thought one of these guys would get to me, and then he only got one of the two that he was targeting in that one. Looping around early in the 5th round, I think this would be pick 51. You got D'Angelo Russell, who, by all accounts, is set to have a lot of stats this year. 9 categories, so the turnovers do matter. But his free throw percentage has, seemed to settle into a now kind of a positive. He was number 60 last year. I mean, that feels like a relatively decent target on a per game basis. If he's durable, he hits his mark in the 50s. This feels relatively safe by all accounts for you here. Was this a safe play on your board?
Yeah, it was a safe play. And again, assists are going off the board pretty early in drafts this season. So I grabbed him there. He's a decent scorer. I mean, he's playing alongside Towns now, but he's still going to get sort of low to mid 20s per game, I would think. And the turnovers are a little bit high, but I think my first 4 picks were reasonably solid in terms of turnovers. So I could afford to take a little bit of a hit there. And I mean, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to turnovers really, even in 9-cat. So, yeah, look, I think, again, he's fairly safe there. He was, what have we got in the rankings? 50. He was a mid-50s in the rankings last year. So I don't sort of see any reason why he can't sort of put up similar production and finish around that same sort of spot. So there's perhaps not a lot of value to be had here, but I think I can lock in assists by picking him up here and then not have to worry about them sort of once we get to the back end of the draft.
Your 6th round pick was pick number 70. You went with Derek White out of San Antonio. We heard he's, I think this was after our draft, we heard that he was dealing with, what is it, a toe thing right now?
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that worry you? Does that worry you at all? I mean, I'm a little bit, I don't know. I think my personal jury is out on whether or not I'm concerned about the toe. It's always kind of something with Derek White, but there's so much upside this year. What would you... I don't know. I guess I have a couple questions here. Number one, are you at all worried about the toe? Would you take him here again, having that information? And I guess the third question is kind of what's the upside for White this year? Feels like it's pretty high.
Yeah, look, the toe, I mean, any injury at this time of year is a little bit concerning given that they haven't really done.
Donato's just didn't add bacon to their pizzas. They added bacon to their bacon. It's Donato's new Bacon Duo pizzas. 2 pizzas, each with 2 kinds of bacon. Try the new Pepperoni Bacon Duo with pepperoni, Canadian bacon, and hardwood smoked bacon. And the Chipotle Bacon Duo with Canadian bacon and Chipotle seasoned bacon. Now get $2 off a large Bacon Duo or any large pizza. Use promo code 2. Donato's. Every piece is important.
Done anything.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
And look, he tends to, he tends to get just little niggling injuries. So he's not sort of a player that gets an injury that costs him weeks or months or anything like that. But he is sort of known for injuries that'll just put him out for 4 games and then he's back for a few weeks and then he might miss 2 games. And so it's a little bit concerning, but I would probably still take him here. I think there's a bit of upside there. He was really good in the bubble well, it's not last year, last season. And I mean, granted, that was without a couple of their sort of key guys, but I think both he and DeJounte proved that they're able to be on the court at the same time. And
it was nice that they finally bothered after we yelled at them all year.
Yeah, and look, and White, especially his perimeter game, he sort of showed that off during the bubble. That was an element that we hadn't really seen. I think he hit 7 threes in a game, maybe from memory. And so, yeah, look, I think there's enough upside here for me I would probably take him there again. And it's a pick that it might pay off, it might not, but we're in round 6 now, so it's sort of time of the draft to start taking a few risks, I think.
Yeah, take a shot. Why the hell not? I like Derek White a lot too, and I'm hoping we hear good things about the toe over the next, I don't know, week really, because we're coming up here on not long. Your 7th round pick is featured in your Twitter bio, so I guess we should have seen this one coming. It is Hoopball's favorite from last year, Brandon Clark, and last year he was number 79 by averages and only 21.5 minutes per game. What do you expect from him, just in terms of where he can take steps forward? What do his minutes look like this year? What does his usage look like? And then how does that translate to fantasy ranks?
Well, yeah, as you said, he was he sort of finished in about the spot that I drafted him. So I would think that his floor would be what he did last year. I don't see any reason for them to reduce his role at all. And then, yeah, I mean, Triple J is going to be out for I'm not sure how long, but to begin the season at least. So I think Clark will get a good shot at extra minutes, at least to begin the season. And he doesn't have a clear path to minutes. I mean, let's be honest, they've got Valanciunas there and Jaren Jackson. So he isn't going to be the starter. But if he can get his minutes even up to sort of 25, 26, he can get his block numbers up slightly. I think I mean, as you said, he's in my Twitter bio, so he's one of my favorite players, and part of that could be because I went to Summer League last year, and that was the first time I'd ever actually seen any sort of NBA action live.
Oh, sweet, that's awesome.
And he was really good. I mean, he got MVP of the tournament. So I actually physically saw him play live, and so maybe my perspective is a little bit biased based on that fact. But yeah, look, as I said, I think his floor is around the top 80, and to begin the season, if he can play minutes sort of in the high 20s. And sort of get a bit of rhythm going and that sort of thing, it'll be hard for them to then scale him all the way back once Jaren Jackson is back. So, again, another upside pick, but I basically pick him in every draft that I'm in. So maybe it's a little bit high.
Yeah, I wonder where – I can't imagine he would have lasted much longer. Maybe to the end of this round would be about as long as I think he would remain on the board. It couldn't be – like he's going – right, he's going in the 80s, 70s and 80s this year, isn't he?
Yeah, in most drafts. I did get him at 140 in one of my other drafts, and it was a team that I really didn't want him on because he didn't fit it was a head-to-head draft where I was punting big man stats, and I really didn't want him, but he was there, so I had to take him at 140. Man. I don't know why he fell that far, but
stars align, dude. I guess if you put a dude's name in your Twitter bio, you just get it.
Yeah,
you just
they
get
leave him alone. Yep.
Looping back to the end of the 8th round, or close to it. Again, you pick 3 here, so 3rd from the end, and this is the one that you surprised the draft room, man. I don't think anybody saw this one coming. You went Boogie at pick 94. Sell me on this one. I mean, I know that his per minute production is crazy high, but does he have health? Is Houston too big of a dumpster fire or just the right size dumpster fire for him? Explain yourself, Adam.
It's hard because I surprised myself, actually. Look, I mean, as you said, his per minute production is good. He's a big guy that doesn't really hurt you anywhere. He can hand out assists, and as Alex said on the pod yesterday, big guys, big men that can put up meaningful assists are pretty important. So that's one element of his game there. I think if he can play minutes sort of in the low to mid 20s, I think he possibly returns value here. He's not going to have a lot of pressure on him, given Christian Wood is likely to be starting and sort of soaking up the bulk of the minutes there at centre. So I think he's in a good position to just be able to ease himself back in, and he's obviously going to have some motivation there, given the last 2 or whatever it's been, 2-3 years, where he's barely played or had an impact. So he's going to be wanting to prove that he can still compete at this level. So it's all, yeah. I mean, it's a risky pick, obviously, given his injury history, but. Again, it's the 8th round. It's a mock draft. Let's just go with it.
Okay, fair enough. Your 9th round pick is a guy that I've been hyping him for too long, unfortunately, and then he moved into the spotlight a little bit, and that's Jeremy Grant, who, what is this? Is this 99? Yeah, this is pick 99 now. He was a guy that I had at kind of the, watch for next year list back in April when I figured Paul Millsap would be leaving Denver and they'd re-sign Jeremy Grant, and then kaboom! Jeremy Grant went and took $20 million a year from the Detroit Pistons because he wanted to be more involved in their offense. Doesn't seem to care as much about winning. I get it. Dude needs to make his money first. Then you can worry about the winning a championship stuff. I mean, it's great if you can do them both at the same time, but not everybody in the NBA is quite so lucky to have those opportunities. Jeremy Grant is an interesting fantasy case study because he is a power forward by trade, but doesn't rebound very much, can hit the 3 ball, can put up decent percentages in both, generally not great, but certainly not terrible, and can block a ton of shots sometimes. So, I was really excited about him as kind of a sleepery type guy this year. I figured he was just going to play that backup role in Denver, and then the season was going to quietly end, and Paul Millsap was going to go somewhere else, and Grant was going to get elevated to the starting spot. And then he had a big bubble, played really well against the Lakers in the playoffs, went and got his money. Now he's got this feature role in Detroit, and I feel like no one's sleeping on him anymore. So I round that very long prelude here on Jeremy Grant to, at 99 feels like right in the middle of where he could end up this year. If his offensive stuff is good enough, he could push up towards that 70-75 range. If it doesn't pan out, if he loses some of his peripheral stats or the percentages suffer, he could fall back behind it. What's some of the thought process on Jeremy Grant? Is it just that usage is value? Because oftentimes it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think it is with him. It's if he plays. I mean, his health is generally pretty good. He hasn't had a lot of injury worries through his career. So I mean, I'm sort of counting on him to play the majority of the games, and a little bit like Cousins, he's sort of, and as you sort of mentioned there, he can do a bit of everything. Doesn't really hurt you anywhere. So a good roto guy, and. Look, to be honest, I mean, there's a certain element of risk in terms of other players around him. If he's got Rose and he's got Blake Griffin, both of who could play the majority of the season or could play 10 games each. Who really knows? Yeah. So I mean, that's going to have obviously a direct impact on his usage. They have Plumlee at centre, and he's not a high usage guy. We assume he's going to be the centre. They've got a lot of centres.
They got 8. You just roll the die, roll a 6-sided die, and whatever number comes up. That's your centre today.
That's right. So yeah, look, I think he'll get his touches, and he wouldn't have gone there. You wouldn't think, unless they had given him some assurances that he was going to have the ball in his hands a little bit, and he was going to be a prominent part of the offense. Yeah. So Yeah, look, I mean, I think getting him at 100 is fine. There's room there for him to obviously beat that mark. And he is one of those guys, 111 guys who can get you a 3, a block, and a steal per game. So no, look, I'm happy to get him there. He does a bit of everything. So
yeah, and one of the games I like to play with stuff like this is to look at the dudes that were drafted, the next 10 picks or so after where you got Grant. How many of those guys have the chance to end the season better than Grant? If the Kings do something insane with their front court, I guess Hassan Whiteside, maybe Aaron Gordon, if he continues to get 6 assists a game. Like, you're at a part of the draft now. Once you're at 100, you got to take some swings. And one of the elements to taking a swing is look for a guy who's going to be on the court and do stuff. And this one, to me, makes a lot of sense. Like, there just aren't that many guys after this where you're thinking, okay, this dude is definitely going to play, 30 to 34 minutes a game, and we know he can be good in that number of minutes. So that's why you see a lot of these other weird names flying off the board here. But let's knock out your final round pick. We were talking about Sacramento a second ago. Might as well stay there. Marvin Bagley at pick 118. How the mighty have fallen. This dude was getting drafted in the 60s and 70s last year. Where is he really? Like, who is this player for real? Or do we just not know yet?
I don't think we know. And again, it's a pick. I mean, I haven't got him in any of my other drafts, so it's not one that I was prepared to make. I didn't have him on a queue or anything like that. I just thought, look, let's take a bit of a flyer. He's not as well rounded as the last 2 guys that I've drafted, but he can be a good source of points, which is tricky to get at the end of the draft. I needed some rebounds, so he sort of fit the bill in terms of what I was looking for, and taking a bit of a flyer there in regards to the injury stuff, and hopefully he can work through that. And look, I mean, if he's healthy and he's starting, he could be playing close to 30 minutes a game, and sort of scoring 15 to 20 points a game. 8 rebounds. So, no, look, I don't think we do know. I don't think he's been able to stay healthy long enough and form connections on the floor with any one player. So maybe this is the year that he does that. We'll just see. But 10th round, whatever, really.
Yeah, again, another guy is going to be kind of a focal point. Which percentages is the Marvin Bagley we get this coming year? Because his rookie year, he went 50 from the field goal mark and 69 at the free throw percent mark. And then last year, in his abridged, 13-game pre-bubble suspension injury season, he was at 47 from the field and 81 at the free throw line. If I know that you're like mixing and matching to look for good or bad, depending on how we take this, but if he ends up as a 50-81 field goal free throw percent guy, it seems like his value could really take off pretty quickly, especially when you consider the fact that he has only played 25 minutes a game his first 2 years, and he's at about a combined 1.5 steals and blocks. So I don't know. He strikes me as one of those guys that could rocket boost from top 150 to like top 90 without doing very much at all, or he could fall farther. So I get it. There's some risk there. Which one do you think we're getting? What is the mirage? What is reality with him?
Oh, I think it's probably a combination of sort of in the middle. I would think that his field goal percentage could get closer to 50. I don't think he'll get to 50, but sort of maybe 49, 48.5, 49%. Free throws, I would love for them to be over 80. I'm not sure if that's sustainable. It was a very small sample size last season. But maybe up towards sort of mid 70s there, 75. So, look, I think he'll be better than last year. And I mean, I don't remember back to drafts specifically last year, but he was going possibly in the 60s or the 70s last season.
Exactly.
So, and he hasn't, in terms of his on-court production, he hasn't really given us any reason to think he can't do that. It's purely injury stuff for him. So, Yeah, I mean, it's health. If he stays healthy, then he should be an easy top 100 guy.
Yeah, I would think so as well. Adam, just quickly here, we got like 2 minutes left before I let you go. Just in terms of the weirdness of this season, is there anything you're doing differently to prep for this year? I know you're like arguably the hardest working guy in fantasy sports, but just like strategically, what are some of the things that you're keeping in the back of your mind? Or I give you the other option. Do you try to wipe a lot of that out because it can be confusing to try to balance extra things as you're going into a draft?
It can be a bit confusing. I'm finding myself doing more roto drafts this year, and I think people are just giving roto a bit more of a go because of the uncertainty of the season.
Yes, come to the dark side. Join me.
Yeah, you love that. Yeah, so I'm actually, I think I'm in more roto leagues than head to head this year, which is odd for me. And so when I do my head to head leagues, I punt all the time. That's just how I draft. So doing roto drafts is a little bit different. I've had to sort of modify my strategy a little bit, and I listened to, you spoke to Eric earlier and you spoke to Alex, and a few things that they mentioned and that I've noticed that I've found myself doing in drafts, which possibly a little bit subconscious, but when I look at who I'm drafting and that sort of thing, I try to, and Eric had mentioned this, I try to always pick guys who are decent in percentages. So I won't draft. It's more, for me, it's more about players that I avoid rather than players that I target. And so I avoid those percentage killers early in the drafts because they're pretty tricky. I mean, if you take a big hit in either field goal or free throw percentage early in a draft, it's tricky to make up ground at the back end of the draft because those categories are normally volume dependent. So if you fall behind in free throw percentage, you're not going to get a guy at the end of the draft who shoots 90% but actually gets to the line 8-9 times a game. So I think trying to avoid percentage killers is good.
I like that. That sort of simplify. You know how I love to simplify the game, and taking a few guys and just sort of moving them off to the side of the board is really, it's a simplifying act. It makes draft day easier because it's less things you're trying to juggle at any one time. And you also know how much I love percentages. So I'm glad that I love that this is a topic that keeps coming up. It's just such an easy way to walk into points in Roto. If you just don't kill yourself in them, you'll probably be top 4 in both, even without targeting guys that are really good at them. They're the forgotten stats in Roto because in head-to-head there's so much random variance that people kind of ignore them.
Yeah. No, I've absolutely found myself doing that. And so, I mean, it does rule out a couple of guys early, like players like Andre Drummond and even Giannis. For me, I don't typically draft him because of the hit you take in free throws. And I would then, and it's not as relatable with other categories, but I would then find myself chasing stats later in the draft, and that perhaps limits your ability to take players that you should be. So, I mean, if you're chasing, say, steals, for instance, you might have a guy who comes up in your rankings because you go, I really need steals. I need to take this guy here at the expense of these other 5 guys who I should be taking above him. So I just, chasing stats in Roto is tricky, and some stats are obviously harder than others to get, and percentages is one of those. But 3-pointers, for instance, if you fall behind, it's easier to get threes at the back end of a draft.
Yes, it is.
But points...
I was just going to say, as evidenced by the fact that the guy that went right in front of your Marvin Bagley was Duncan Robinson.
Yeah. So that's right. And Bertans is sort of down in there, and even guys like Seth Curry, that sort of thing. They're going late in drafts, and so you can pick up some stats late, but others, if you're chasing them, it can just limit your options at certain picks, and you can perhaps miss out on guys who would be a better fit if you hadn't unintentionally punted a category early.
Yeah, the accidental punt is one that I've stepped in a couple of times. The purposeful one in Roto, I try to avoid. Adam, outstanding as always. Let's do this again sooner than usual. I think right now, because we're actually 19 hours apart instead of 17, it actually makes it a lot easier, because normally, like right now, I'd be pre-daylight saving for both of us. I think I'd be getting in my car right now to drive the nanny home, so we wouldn't have been able to make this time work. So we're gonna have to maximize the appearances between now and like the end of February, or whenever it all flips back. He is the great Adam King at Adam King 91 on Twitter. Don't forget that number at the end, at Adam King 91. He's the assistant managing editor for us at Hoopball. We're lucky guys here. Enjoy your Brandon Clark, Adam. I'll talk to you soon.
I will. Thanks, Dan.
And that was our buddy, the great Adam King, here at Hoopball. Very, very lucky to have Adam on board. A terrific fantasy mind and one of the hardest workers in the NBA landscape. That's what you want on your side. That's the guy you want for advice. That's the guy you want sort of fighting with you on the fantasy front. The two things that I mentioned at the beginning of the show on the Hoopball side, they are, one of them is for us and one of them is for you. So I'm going to do the for us first and then the for you after that. The for us, of course, is the Fantasy Pass. It's $4.99 a month. $4.99 a month. Here's where I stand on that. First of all, it has the Brewski 150, updated again today. Aaron is cranking away on that thing. Updated again today, the Brewski 150. It has the entirety of the draft guide, which now, by the way, the draft guide is so darn packed. It has the points leagues projections loaded in there now, dynasty ranks, both Fantrax and CBS point leagues, and auction values. So it's got all of that stuff loaded in there now. This is critical. Depth charts, projections, the Roto Balance app to use while you're drafting, punt strategy, head-to-head strategy, auction strategies, you name it, it's got it. It's all in the draft guide. It also has the DFS pass, which starts tomorrow. DFS games start tomorrow with the preseason. So, yeah, that's pretty damn sweet. That's a $2.99 a month or a $1.99 a month value that's built into the Fantasy Pass, basically for free. And all in-season tools. And this is all under the one Fantasy Pass heading for $4.99 a month. Tonight, I was talking to my wife earlier today, before she went to work, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to eat for dinner tonight. And one of the thoughts was, well, should we just order in? Should we get some Greek food? And we thought, yeah, maybe that could work. You know, the toddler likes the steak, or likes the meat from that restaurant around the corner. And then I thought, well, this actually makes a great discussion point on today's podcast, because if we opt not to order in from the Greek place tonight, which, by the way, we will eventually, so don't worry, we'll support our local businesses here. But if we opt not to, and instead I make, I don't know, some sort of noodles and pasta sauce kind of thing, that's a difference in cost to our family of probably about $25 or $30 in one night. You see where I'm going with this, right? I want all of you to do that one time this month, between now and the end of December, when you were thinking about ordering in. Instead, make yourself something and think, oh, I just saved myself, I don't know, $15, $20. I'm a family, so we save $30, $40. You can get yourself a Fantasy Pass for the whole dang season for that. Call it a big win. You make yourself food, takes a few minutes, you clean it up, get yourself a Fantasy Pass. $4.99 a month. Hoop-ball.com. So easy. Hoop-ball.com. Click on the Fantasy Pass ad right there on the homepage and start your subscription today. The Hoopball thing that's for you guys is the return of the Brews Letter. Oh, yes. We'll be talking about it on tomorrow's show. Aaron Brewski will be popping on with us for our Friday episode. Right? Tomorrow's Friday, isn't it? Yeah, tomorrow's Friday. We'll be talking to Brew about the Brews Letter on tomorrow's episode, but it is officially back. I have word as of yesterday in the evening. Brew agreed to do it again this year. Last season, for those, many of you signed up for it. I think some like 2,000 of you signed up for the Brews Letter last year, and it was a beast, man. He was writing 8, 9, 10,000 words in an email newsletter. But here's the kicker. It's only available on the email news list. Okay, so you have to sign up for the Hoopball email list, and you get the Brews Letter when it comes out. It's not on the website. You can't go to a link. It's not going to be on Twitter. It's in none of these places. The only place the Brews Letter goes is via email to your inbox, and you can sign up super easily. It's a bit.ly link, so bit.ly, or as it's been made fun of before, bit.ly/Brews Letter 2021. Really easy. bit.ly/Brews Letter 2021. It's spelled like newsletter, but with a BR instead of an N at the beginning, and then the numbers 2021. bit.ly/Brews Letter 2021. Sign up right now. Make sure you get the first one, which is coming later this month in December. So you haven't missed one yet. And if it takes you 24 hours to sign up, cool, you still haven't missed it. We're going to be posting the link around on social media, wherever we can get it. This is your chance to sign up for the Brews Letter. It's going to be fantasy nuggets every time it comes out. He stays up all night on Sunday evening and pumps that thing out. And the first one this year will be coming later this month, later in December. So get on that newsletter right now. Big thank you, as always, to our sponsors here on the Fantasy NBA Today podcast with MyBookie.ag and Manscaped.com. I'm not going to inundate you with all of their stuff today, but suffice to say, if you sign up at MyBookie.ag, hit me up. We have a promo over there that might get you a few bucks. Oh, yes, you like the free bucks, don't you? Hit me up. My DMs are open on Twitter. Again, that's at Dan Vespers. MyBookie.ag is the website, but bug me if you're thinking about signing up, because I think I might have something for you. Manscaped.com, promo code is HoopBall20 to get 20% off and free shipping. That is your show on this Thursday. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you once again to the wonderful Adam King. Tomorrow, Brew and the Weekend coming up on Friday's edition. This was Fantasy NBA Today, a Hoopball presentation. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoopball presentation.